Lady Estelle. Celine suddenly leaned closer. Do you prefer roses or lilies? What? Before Estelle could answer, Anastasia spoke. Peonies suit her better. Celine frowned. I wasn't asking you. You were taking too long. The two girls glared at each other. Estelle looked around desperately. There had to be an escape route, a hidden tunnel, a monster attack, an earthquake, anything. Then, a servant hurried into the garden. Lady Estelle. The poor man looked nervous. The Imperial Mage has arrived. The garden fell silent. Anastasia raised an eyebrow. Celine blinked. Estelle froze. Reynold. Why? The servant swallowed. He said he wishes to see Lady Estelle. Immediately. Celine stood. Anastasia stood. Denied. Absolutely not. The servant looked like he wanted to cry. He is already here. A shadow suddenly covered the table. Everyone looked up. Standing behind them was Reynold Eckhart. Dark brown hair. Emerald green eyes. Black mage robes embroidered with silver runes. The young mage looked completely unbothered by the hostility directed at him. Which made sense. He was the strongest mage in the Empire, and one of the few people capable of leveling a city if sufficiently annoyed. Lady Estelle. His gaze landed on her immediately, as if the other people didn't exist. I heard there was a tea party. Anastasia narrowed her crystal blue eyes. And you didn't invite me. The accusation was so unexpected that Estelle almost choked. What? For the first time, something that looked suspiciously close to disappointment appeared on Reynold's face. You invited Celine. His eyes moved toward Anastasia. You invited the crown princess. Then back to her. But not me. The Imperial Mage sounded genuinely offended. Estelle stared. Celine stared. Anastasia stared. The servant stared. Was the Imperial Mage pouting? No. Impossible. Reynold Eckhart didn't pout. The man terrified half the continent. Yet somehow, would you like an invitation next time? Yes. The answer came immediately, without hesitation, without shame, without dignity. Estelle's soul left her body. What was happening? Half an hour later, the tea party somehow transformed into a disaster. Reynold sat beside Estelle. Celine sat beside Estelle. Anastasia sat beside Estelle. Nobody was willing to move. The atmosphere was suffocating. The servant serving tea looked ready to resign. Then Reynold casually reached into his robe. A small crystal appeared in his hand. It glowed faintly. The next second, tiny blue butterflies, made of manna, filled the garden. Celine gasped. Anastasia blinked. Even Estelle stared. The magical butterflies danced around the flowers, landing on roses, floating across the fountain, turning the entire garden into something straight out of a dream. Pretty! The word escaped before Estelle could stop it. The butterflies immediately swarmed around her. Reynold's expression softened. Just a little. Barely noticeable. But it happened. And unfortunately, everyone saw it. Celine's eyes widened. Anastasia looked suspicious. The servants looked shocked, because the Imperial Mage never smiled. Ever. Yet at that moment, he looked almost happy. All because Estelle liked some butterflies. How ridiculous. That evening, Estelle escaped back to the Lancaster mansion. She had survived. Barely. The tea party. The rivalry. The insanity. All of it. She pushed open the library doors. Finally. Peace. Quiet. Sanity. Then she noticed someone sitting by the window. Dark brown hair. Green eyes. A familiar black robe. Reynold. Estelle nearly screamed. Why are you here? The mage looked up from his book. Calm. Composed. Completely at home. You said I could come next time. That was for tea parties. I interpreted it differently. Obviously. Reynold considered this. Then closed his book. I apologize. Estelle sighed in relief. Finally. A normal response. Then he added, I'll use the front door next time. Estelle slowly sat down. Maybe, just maybe, the execution wasn't her biggest problem anymore. Because somehow, the most dangerous man in the Empire had decided he liked spending time with her. And unlike the others, Reynold wasn't loud about it, which was somehow far more terrifying. The next morning, Estelle discovered a horrifying fact. Reynold had not been joking. He had actually started using the front door. At exactly 9 o'clock, every morning, without fail. The first day, he arrived with a book. The second day, he arrived with another book. The third day, he arrived with tea leaves. By the seventh day, even the servants had stopped questioning his existence. One maid simply greeted him. "Good morning, Lord Reynold." "Good morning," and continued dusting furniture, as though the imperial mage appearing in the Lancaster mansion every day was completely normal. It was not normal. Nothing about this was normal. Lady Estelle. Estelle looked up from her novel. Reynold was standing beside her favorite armchair, holding something. "What is that?" "A gift." Estelle immediately became suspicious. Theodore's gifts usually involved enough flowers to fill a greenhouse. Raphael's gifts usually sparkled. Vincent's gifts came with royal seals. Anastasia's gifts were worth more than houses. Celine's gifts were enough to feed an empire. She was afraid, very afraid. Slowly, Reynold opened his hand. A tiny creature sat on his palm. Round, fluffy, blue. It looked like a cloud that had gained consciousness. Estelle gasped. The creature squeaked. "Oh my God!" The creature squeaked again. "Oh my God!" The tiny thing immediately launched itself into her arms. Reynold looked satisfied. Estelle looked ready to cry. "What is this?" "A mana spirit. It's adorable." "Yes. Can I keep it?" "That's why I brought it." The spirit curled up in her lap, fast asleep. Estelle was in love, not with Reynold, with the spirit, obviously. Unfortunately, the universe hated her, because 2 hours later, Theodore arrived. The midnight blue-haired heir immediately spotted the spirit. "What is that?" "A mana spirit. It's cute." "It is." Theodore narrowed his amber eyes, then looked at Reynold, then back at the spirit, then back at Reynold. The realization hit him. "You're bribing her." "No. You absolutely are." "No. You brought a magical puppy." "It's not a puppy. It's basically a puppy." The spirit barked. Everyone stared. Reynold looked mildly offended. "It appears you were correct. Things only got worse from there. Because Raphael arrived. Then Vincent arrived. Then Celine. Then Anastasia. Within 30 minutes, everyone had gathered in the same room. Again, Estelle was beginning to think she was cursed. "What's its name?" Celine asked. The room became silent. Everyone looked at Estelle. Estelle looked at the spirit. The spirit looked at Estelle. Then it sneezed. A tiny puff of glitter exploded into the air. "Machi." The spirit squeaked happily. "It's settled." "Machi," the room collectively agreed, which was strange, because nobles usually argued over everything. Yet somehow nobody questioned Machi. Later that night, after everyone finally left, Estelle wandered onto the balcony. The mansion was quiet. The gardens below glowed beneath moonlight. For once, peace, actual peace. "You're hiding." Estelle nearly jumped off the balcony. Reynold stood behind her. Again, somehow, some way, the man appeared out of nowhere with alarming frequency. "Do mages not understand doors? I used one." "Not the point." Reynold stepped beside her. The two looked out over the gardens. For a moment, neither spoke. It was surprisingly comfortable. No fighting, no arguing, no declarations, just silence. Then Reynold suddenly asked, "Are you afraid?" Estelle blinked. The question caught her off guard. "Of what?" "Everything." His green eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was no teasing, no awkwardness, no strange gifts, only concern. Estelle looked away, because the answer was obvious. She was terrified, terrified of the future, terrified of the execution she remembered, terrified of losing the family she had somehow grown to love, but she couldn't exactly explain that. So she laughed. "A little. I'm fine." Reynold was quiet. Then, "No, you're not." Estelle froze. The smile slipped from her face. Because somehow, out of everyone, he was the first person who noticed. Not the overprotective brothers. Not the Emperor. Not Vincent. Not anyone else. Reynold simply looked at her and saw right through the act. And for some reason, that was far more dangerous than butterflies, or mana spirits, or unexpected visits. Because for the first time since waking up as Estelle Lancaster, someone was looking at her. Not the adorable little sister. Not the Duke's daughter. Not the fiancée of the Crown Prince. Just her. And Estelle wasn't sure what to do with that doubt. A month later, disaster struck. Again. Estelle stared at the cream-colored envelope in her hands, then at her mother, then back at the envelope, then back at her mother. No. Duchess Diana smiled. Yes. No. Yes. No. Estelle. The Duchess gently cupped her face. You have to attend the Imperial Academy, eventually. Estelle wanted to cry. The Imperial Academy. The place where the original novel truly began. The place where Vincent fell in love with Celine. The place where Estelle gained enemies. The place where her downfall started. She remembered writing every single chapter, every single disaster, every single misunderstanding. And now she had to live through it. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The day of the entrance ceremony arrived far too quickly. The Lancaster mansion was in chaos. Servants rushed everywhere. Dresses appeared. Jewelry appeared. Duchess Diana appeared. Stand still. I'm standing. You're moving. I'm breathing. Stop it. Mother, that's not how breathing works. Nearby, Duke Lucas laughed. The silver-haired Duke looked far too entertained. Cashin immediately glared at him. Father is encouraging her. Of course I am. You shouldn't. You sound exactly like me. I know. I apologize. Cashin looked offended. Lucien looked like he was trying not to laugh. When Estelle finally arrived at the academy, she froze. The campus was beautiful. White stone buildings, large gardens, crystal fountains, hundreds of noble students. And unfortunately, everyone noticed her. Immediately, whispers spread through the crowd. That's Lady Estelle, the Lancaster daughter, the Crown Prince's fiancée, the Duke's youngest child. Estelle wanted to disappear, preferably underground, forever. Then a familiar voice called out, Estelle. Theodore Sinclair approached first. Midnight blue hair, amber eyes, a smile bright enough to cause property damage. Beside him walked Celine. The blonde heroine smiled warmly. Good morning. Estelle relaxed slightly. At least she knew them. Then another voice interrupted. Move! Raphael Ashford appeared. Ginger hair, gray eyes, perfect timing, terrible timing. As always. Theodore immediately frowned. Raphael frowned back. The atmosphere deteriorated. Good morning. The crowd fell silent. Estelle didn't need to look. She already knew. White hair, crystal blue eyes, royal uniform. Vincent Castellan, the Crown Prince. Students immediately bowed. The whispers became louder. Vincent ignored everyone. Naturally, his attention landed directly on Estelle. Naturally, and unfortunately, he smiled. Students gasped. Several girls looked ready to faint. One professor dropped his papers. Estelle considered running away. Again. Lady Estelle. Another voice. The crowd somehow became even quieter. Anastasia stepped from her carriage. Silver hair shining beneath the sunlight. Crystal blue eyes calm and elegant. The Crown Princess walked directly toward Estelle. Then stopped beside her. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. The academy's students looked traumatized. Honestly, Estelle understood. Then the sky cracked. Or at least, it sounded like it did. A circle of emerald magic appeared above the courtyard. Students screamed. Professors panicked. Several guards drew swords. A portal slowly opened. And from it stepped Reynold Eckhart, the Imperial Mage, the strongest mage in the Empire. The man looked around, noticed Estelle, and immediately walked toward her, ignoring literally everyone else. The silence was deafening. A first-year student fainted. Nobody blamed him. Good morning, Lady Estelle. Estelle closed her eyes. Of course this was happening. It would have been stranger if it didn't. Good morning, Lord Reynold. The mage nodded, then held out a small box. A congratulatory gift. Somewhere nearby, Theodore groaned. Raphael covered his face. Vincent's smile vanished. Anastasia looked interested. Celine looked delighted. And Estelle suddenly realized something horrifying. This wasn't the original story anymore. Not even close. And for the first time, she had absolutely no idea what would happen next.